The cloner plugin will allow us to clone many containers within our scenes. So to set this up here, let's go in and drag a 3D object into our scene here. And it will be important to decide beforehand, before applying this cloner, whether you want to apply a map and or a material. For now, we're just going to use a material here, and we're just going to scale this down a bit. So before I grab the cloner, what I want to do is actually group this. So the cloner works on a topmost group. So now we're going to go into the built-ins, into our CP tab, down into the tools folder, and grab our cloner, and we're going to drag that onto the topmost container, or the container that has our cube within it. Now I'm going to click on the cloner here to go into the cloner properties, and we have our clones count, which is set to 100 by default. I'm just going to leave it at the default number of 100. We also have our clones rows set to 1 by default, and a clones columns set to 1 by default. Since my clones count is 100 up here, I want to put my clone rows and clone columns as a multiple of 100. So I'm just going to put 10 in here, and then 10 in here as well. Now I need to come down to my delta X and start spreading this out. And you can see when I start spreading it out that it spreads it out in tens. So now I have a delta Y that I can spread out to, and there are 10 rows by 10 columns. So we have 100 cubes in here. And if we just bring this and reposition this within our scene, we also have other options here. So we have a delta Z, so I can bring some of these forward or backwards in Z space as well. We have our plane option here for X and Y, which it is set to by default. We also have an X and a Z, which we could change, and our YZ. Now we also have a shape option. It is set to matrix by default. We can also change this to ellipse. And when we change it to ellipse, a new window opens up down below. Now we can make new adjustments in here with our ellipse using our R1, our R2, our minimum angle, and max angle. So as you can see, when we adjust our minimum angle here, we can spread this out. Our R1 then will come in and spread out the base of it, and the R2 will spread the Y base of it out, as you can see here. If we adjust the max angle, it adjusts the other end of this ellipse, and we also have an offset angle with the ellipse setting. So as we adjust this, we can spin these cubes a bit. So besides the ellipse, we also have a setting for sphere here, and we can turn it to sphere. And again, when we do that, it gives us new options underneath it here for radius. So we can come in and spread our radius out, and or spread it down and put it wherever we need it. So let's move this to the center of the screen again. With our radius, we have our minimum azimuth and a maximum azimuth, so we can kind of cut this in half as well. And if we spin this around, we can see what that azimuth does is that it just kind of cuts our sphere cloner in half. We also have a minimum pitch here, so we can make more adjustments on the bottom half of it, and then on the top half as well, we can make some more adjustments. So one thing to notice within the scene tree is that when you do use the cloner, it actually makes 100 containers here, or however many containers you have within your clone count. So you do need to be careful with that, not to overextend your scene. And a lot of the shapes that you get will depend on what geometry you use within your scene for it and how many clone counts you have.